Hello, and welcome back to the Tomney podcast. Today, we are going to be talking about the horror movie Hereditary.
Can we call it horror?
It's under the horror category.
Oh, I thought it was more of a thriller.
I think it's a psychological horror.
Oh.
Yep.
Anyways, this is not a spoiler-free review, and this is also not a recap of what happened. Go watch the movie, come back, listen to our thoughts.
So, we're going to start with, our likes. You want to go first?
No, you can.
Alright. Well, for me, my first, and these are not really in any particular order, but I've just given myself 3 things that I particularly liked about the movie. The first one is that the ending is just incredibly well worth it. I know for my likes I'm starting at the very, very end, but it's super worth it. I appreciate that, like, the time that I spent watching that movie was definitely well worth it. I don't know. Just repeated myself. But yeah, what about you? What's one of your...
I liked how this movie was often a very slow build-up to intensity. Like, pretty much a lot of the movie was just build-up. And I feel like too many horror movies or scary movies just try to rush into horror instead of taking their time to kind of develop the tension. And this movie did a good job.
That's a very good point. I like that. I guess another thing that I really liked is that the story is unique. I think, and you can debate me on this, I think that the general premise of the story of how everything comes together and just kind of all the parts leading up to it, I think all of it is actually very unique, and for a horror movie, I think it's a really good concept. Being vague, I don't know why, but the whole it being hereditary and kind of the reveal throughout the story that makes that title make a lot more sense. I love that, the whole cult thing going way back from, the grandmother's time and whatnot, and how that affects the family even after her passing is really cool. I don't know. I've just not seen many horror movies based around or stemming from cult activity in this way. I haven't seen that in a long time, or ever, maybe. I won't say ever, but I just haven't seen it in a while.
It's almost like the cult, it was just so deeply embedded into them versus just either something they encounter or, I don't know, I'm
just
trying to think
stuff
of
happening
other
in the
movies.
background that kind of manifest in the foreground, and when it's like slowly building up and when it's slowly building up and you're understanding that this is all along, this has actually been the doings of the cult in the background, is so cool. So I really enjoyed that. Sorry, that was a little long-winded.
I enjoyed the fact that twist of Charlie's death. I think a lot of people thought she'd be a central character. And they definitely, Game of Thrones, chopped her head off style. Yeah, I think that shifted the tone of the movie into a very much more intense. Like, everything became much more serious after that happened.
Very melancholic.
Who was this grandma? We don't know, but we just hear a bit about her. And, the mother doesn't really grieve that death versus the death of her child. She definitely cares a lot more about.
It was actually very interesting, just a side note, I guess, but it was a very good job of showing the different reactions of the mother, who, in this movie, she's kind of the main narrator, if you will. Like, everything is really from her point of view, even when she's not in the scene. It just always feels like the mother's presence is somewhat there in every scene, but I thought it was really cool that, yeah, her reaction to her mother's death was very different from Charlie's death. I think they both impacted her the same amount, though. So, like, even though her grieving was less when her mother died, it still affected her the same volume. Like, do you know what I mean by that?
No, because she kind of like barely cared, in her own words, about the death of her mother, versus she was screaming and hollering over the death of her daughter.
I'm not talking about her reaction. I'm talking about what it did to her. Like, her mom passing away without really having that relationship with her, without knowing the faces of the people at her funeral, and that got to her. That bugged her, that she didn't know her mom. I think she wanted to, because all she wanted was a normal family. And I think she was like, is it weird that it didn't really bug me? But what if it really didn't bug her? Why would she even care that it didn't bug her? Like,
yeah,
you know what I mean?
See that.
Like, she the whole time, she just, like, it built up, because the whole breakdown, her whole psyche breakdown started more so with her mother's death and having to go through her things and, closing off her old room. And apparently she was living with them at one point, so, like, she was living in her house, and yet they didn't talk at all. Then again, she had to do the eulogy at her funeral, and it's like super awkward, because it's like, wow, I'm doing this eulogy for a mom for my mom, but I don't really know much about her because we just never got along. So I think that's really interesting that, like, I think it definitely bothered her more so once her mom passed away, that she realized there were so many loose ends that she just didn't have closure. Like, I think she probably would have preferred if her mom passed away on good terms, and to have to find out very important things about her mom after her passing really made her uncomfortable. But Charlie, like, dying suddenly, just, I think that was just, like, the breaking point. I think at that point she just was no longer be a mother without Charlie. I think that she felt like everything that made her keep herself together was gone. All of her reason, like, Charlie being gone, made it so that she didn't know who she was anymore. So that's kind of interesting.
The last point, I think we both have the same one, is how every scene has a purpose, how no scene is used without purpose.
Yeah, I can't remember where I heard this from, but I think it was like some famous director. I don't know. Maybe you'll recognize this quote, but I loved the way that somebody had said, like, a movie should, everything that it shows you, everything that you hear, like, dialogue wise, should matter. Like, there shouldn't just be filler like scenes just to, like, pass time or to add to the world, I guess. Like, because yeah, you can do world building, but that should matter. It's not like you should
matter to the plot. It should not just exist.
Yeah, and not just exist because, oh, I want to make it seem like real, like these people in the background are real people. Oh, so I'm going to have this main character talk to his neighbor, and the neighbor doesn't matter later on in the movie. No, I want the neighbor to matter. Like, make the neighbor be the out of the blue hero at the end. Like, we saw him for like 5 minutes at the beginning of the movie, and he comes in like clutch at the end. Like, that's cool. But don't...
Instead of having like a medieval world, and in your world blue chickens exist, and you show a scene of blue chickens.
Right. Like,
okay, that has what effect on the plot?
Right.
None.
So,
not
like,
needed.
Make it matter. Make the so, like, every transition mattered in this movie. Like, I think we watched it twice, but the first time we
I think we missed some stuff.
We missed some stuff, but I remember you were like, the dog just disappeared. And I was like, no, he didn't. He showed up a couple of times. He
pretty much disappeared.
No. Even the dog mattered. So, like, the first time you saw, like, the dog was kind of more the husband's dog. And he, like, hung around him more. But I think he also, he ended up showing up because Charlie or somebody was in the room with the brother, and he noticed that person standing over there, so he was growling from the doorway and whimpering, and like the son was just like, what's wrong, you know? Mm-hmm. And I just thought that was kind of cool because, like, other than that, like, he wasn't like a... I hate it when they show you dogs or like show you animals and then later that animal just like is dead.
Yeah, it's unnecessary.
It's like unnecessary, you know? But like that dog, he didn't show up because he didn't have that much of like a part. But
I feel like if you removed his parts, it wouldn't make a difference.
No, what I'm saying is his reaction to something in the brother's room shows that it may not have totally been a hallucination, or at least it could have been more like a physical manifestation rather than all imaginary. You know what I mean? Like there could have been an apparition, because you know how some people think that like animals can see apparitions or, you know, things that humans can't. But the fact that like he thought that he was seeing somebody standing in the corner, and then the dog being upset because there is something standing in the corner is kind of like saying like, hey, maybe this isn't just a hallucination or all just a dream or blah, blah, blah. So I don't know. I just thought it was kind of cool that even that dog who really wasn't important, like he still had a purpose at when he showed up, he had a purpose. It didn't like just not, it just like, cause at the beginning, you had to see the dog. Like, you had to see the dog walk in to the son's bedroom to wake him up in the morning when the dad came to wake him up for school or for the funeral or whatever, for the grandmother's funeral. So, like, you had to see the dog at some point at the beginning of the movie for that scene to make sense, because otherwise it would have been like, okay, there's a dog. Like, you know, like if you'd never seen the dog until that scene, it would have made no sense. So I at least kind of appreciated that every character mattered. Like every character that you saw mattered. Every scene mattered. Like even the scene where Annie, the mom, is going to that therapy grieving session.
Like it gives backstory with exposition, but at the same time, like it's not too terrible a job of exposition, just because with context, it makes sense that she's just getting off her chest all the problems.
That her family has caused her, and that it has been eating away at her, even though she probably at the time wasn't making it seem as though it was getting to her. So like her brother being schizophrenic and then committing suicide, she, you know, kind of started it off as being nonchalant about it. But it's like, I think she realized, like, hey, the stuff I'm saying is actually crazy and really tragic. And, but at the same time, like, she's like, well, but I have to be strong for my children, you know? And, like, later when she's flipping out at her son, because she's like, stop giving me that snarky look or whatever, I think, you know, she kind of, like, outbursts and she's like, I always have to keep my cool because, you know, if I don't, then all hell breaks loose. And it's like, yeah, I think you've been letting a lot of things kind of break you down more than just your mom passing away, Charlie passing away. I think there's a lot of things in her life that has happened that she always had to just bottle up and brace it as best as she could.
Yeah.
So
critiques. Mine would be the son's acting.
You did not like that actor. That's interesting. Did you
Well,
like...
it's not like I didn't like the actor as a, well, I mean, I don't know him as a person, but like, some of his lines were fine, but like, I feel like he kind of like was not really that good with his delivery, in my opinion, especially with the crying scene. The scene that makes it seem like he never heard crying before and was just kind of told what it kind of sounded like, and then he tried to emulate it.
That's fair. He didn't like his delivery. That's okay. I remember that really funny conversation we had where it was like, okay, what is a teenage boy supposed to sound like crying? And then we saw this movie recently where this guy was basically getting eaten by a possessed corpse. Look, we'll get to it later. But he was screaming because he was being eaten. Or no, I don't think he was being eaten. I think he was being just killed, you know.
Okay, maybe that's not the best example.
And you were like, that's what a man crying sounds like. And I was like, well, I guess if it takes that much to break down like a manly man or something, like, sure, I guess at that point you would probably just lose your shit.
Anyways.
You would lose your mind. Anyways, my dislike was, it's the only one I have, but I just thought it was a little slow at the beginning. It was a little slow at first. Obviously, as I said before, it was well worth it. But the reason why I think I mentioned earlier, we have seen this movie twice. The reason why we saw it twice is because we also tried to show a friend of ours because we really wanted to see his reaction to the end. But I think the hardest part about getting through this movie for a second time, even knowing what was going to happen, is that it's like you get to see all the foreshadowing, because it's kind of hard to see what is foreshadowing at the first time. A lot of it is, but it's hard to see what is foreshadowing when you watch it for the first time. But when you watch it for the second time, you're like, oh, that's what that was leading to.
Probably my favorite example of this would be like the dad and son walk into the room and they're like, what's that smell? And then it just like kind of cuts to something else. Well, it's like, if you just watch that out of context, be like, oh, that's weird. But then if you kind of rewatch it, or even just pay attention to that, it's like, turns out, oh, it was the grandma.
Yeah, her dead body was just
so
in
you
the
could
attic.
see when it was put in there.
Yeah. You could see like how long it had been standing or sitting in the attic. But also, there's more foreshadowing to that. I don't know if you caught it the second time around. The dad was getting 2 days after the grandmother's funeral. The dad was getting phone calls from the graveyard,
well, obviously,
or from the cemetery.
I wouldn't say that's necessary. Well, kind of
That's foreshadowing
yeah.
the body too, is what I'm saying.
But that one was a lot more obvious.
Yeah, but he got a. There was another thing to that too, because he got another call about it, and
I think it was probably the Charlie's grave.
Yeah. So, but yeah, so that's kind of cool. I was thinking a cool foreshadowing was actually Charlie cutting off the head of the bird. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the obsession with heads, which turns out she was actually Pazuzu. Or what was it? Paimon.
Jeez.
Do you know what? Rewatching it, I think something that I didn't catch the first time was the mother during the seance had actually seen the grandchild. So I can't quite remember, but she either did see Charlie when trying it alone, or was hoping to see Charlie, and that's why she wanted to do the seance.
Mm-hmm. I thought it was a very subtle but unique thing that when the mom did the seance with the husband and the son, that Charlie, no, instead of just, drawing something, she just like fully possessed the mom, but she was not trying to do that. So it was kind of interesting because she thought she was just standing in the room like she did before, but in fact she had possessed the mom. And I just really like the fact that the voice changed and that the son and the husband were reacting to the fact that she was like, "Mom, Mom," but it was Charlie's voice, and that's what was freaking them out. It was not that she was like acting as Charlie, because that would kind of be a little bit more obscure, but the fact that she not only was acting but sounding like her. Also, I really just like the tidbit. Now we're just getting into like little things, but I really like the tidbit of that sensory. I don't know, something about when movies use sounds as kind of like a weird, creepy, just something that's there that's supposed to just bring back a memory of something from earlier. So I thought that was so cool that like this character, she, is different, and so she does have these tics, and she also has like her physical features even are actually like important too, because she is a girl, Charlie is a girl, but because of her birth defect she does look a little bit more male, because her like eyebrow, like her brow bone is a little more like protruding, which is kind of more of a male like feature. And her like nose, the way it was like the bridge of her nose is also just a little more masculine rather than feminine. So she like her jaw too was like a little bit wider, and so even her physical features like kind of made her look a little more masculine. And that's really interesting because the reveal of her being Paimon is a man, but he has female features and he needs to be put into a male body. And so it's kind of interesting because it's like, well, this is Charlie, who is a female body, but she looks kind of manly. You know what I mean? And so she needs to be put, like, and so Paimon, and that's because it's Paimon. And it's actually, like, Paimon who looks more like a female. Like, I don't know how to, you know what I mean? Like, it's the fact that their features don't match their actual gender. And I just think that's really interesting. But also just, the heads. When she was chopping off the head of the bird, and I was like, Charlie, what you doing? What you doing, girl?
She's sacrificing. Alright. So that about wraps it up. Thank you so much for watching. You have listened to the Tomney Podcast.
Bye!